Welcome to Guitar Villains. I'm your host, Tyler Larson. Why guitar villains, you ask? Well, because villains are cooler than heroes. It's just a fact. This is a podcast by guitar players for guitar players, and over the course of this series, we'll talk to some of the most innovative and creative minds in the guitar community, find out what makes them tick, and find out how we can become better guitar players ourselves. Thank you for watching the video podcast here on YouTube, and you can also listen to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Today's guitar villain is Joe Satriani. Known in his truest form as a literal alien, Satriani's music can certainly transport you to various places in the universe. And after paving the way for so many guitar players after him, Satch is still the master of the six-string sonic highway we're all driving down. With dozens of Grammy nominations and what seems like an endless catalog of music, Joe is constantly innovating and always inspiring in the realm of guitar. And if you know me, you know how pumped I am to have Joe on this episode of Guitar Villains. Welcome to Guitar Villains, the show where we deconstruct and decode the guitar. And Joe, I feel like we're sort of kindred spirits in that we both left our budding football careers, which totally would have panned out and we would be in the NFL today.
Yeah.
Instead we became guitar players. But I was actually a soccer player in high school and I was recruited to be the kicker. It turned out I was good, and the end of the season I had a choice to either go play football in like Gainesville or Poughkeepsie, New York, or go to music school in Boston. I don't know about you. I think I made the right choice.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's good though. I mean, sports is great. Music is so physical that anything that you can add to being in touch with your body is great. I think it always helps the musical experience and being a musician, being in touch with every little muscle and joint is so important. And so, yeah, if you can dance or play soccer, whatever it is, that's great. As long as you don't.
We have some athleticism about us, right?
Yeah, small movements, very tiny movements, but still, it's about connecting your heart and your mind to your body, and that's really what it is. And it's using all your senses, and but ultimately the guitar doesn't play itself,
Right, indeed. And for context, anybody who doesn't know, you were 14 years old. Your friend, while you were about to head out to football practice, told you that Jimi Hendrix had passed away, and you immediately went and quit the team and vowed to become a guitar player. And this story is well documented. I don't want to rehash it, but the one thing I want to clarify is you didn't yet play the guitar when you made that decision. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. I had only, I'd been a drummer since the age of 9. I took lessons, I think, for about 3 years. My teacher was a jazz guy. But in the course of those 3 years, I started to notice that I just wasn't feeling like I was really connecting 100%. And I just thought, when you're a kid, you're so impatient. And I was very impatient with the lack of my progress. And I just thought, boy, everybody sounds better than me, and then, as you start to get into 10, 11, 12, you really start getting distracted by fun, sex, whatever it is that's going on. And so I've tried to remember, what was my thought process? But I think it was more of a overwhelming feeling than anything else. It seemed logical to me. I had quite the time that night at dinner convincing the family that that's what I was going to do. I literally, announced at dinner, stood up and said, okay, everybody, and this is what's going to happen. And there was like a moment of silence followed by everybody yelling and screaming.
You spoke it into existence.
Yes. But it's funny. I always thought that the feeling of loss was the biggest thing I felt. Like I couldn't understand, how am I going to get through the next week of school without having Jimi Hendrix in my life, and That's how important music was to me. And I just thought, well, then you have to provide the music. I wasn't thinking I'd ever be as good as him or I'd replace him or any of that. It was nothing logical or concrete. It was more like an emotion that there was loss and I had to fill it. And that was the only thing that seemed to make sense, was to play guitar. And then, of course, I found out how hard it was and how much it hurt my fingers. And like every other beginner, I just sucked. And I was just like, wow, how do I get from nowhere to square one at least?
Well, that's a good lesson for everybody. Joe Satriani once sucked at guitar, so you never have to feel bad. So we do things a little bit differently on this show, Joe. We're going to play some games. I'm going to try to get to the bottom of what makes you tick as a musician, and hopefully you'll have a great time. And maybe the next time touring is back on the menu and you're coming through Nashville, we can link up if you're coming through, maybe like the Ryman or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, that'd be great to play there again. Yeah.
So this show is called Guitar Villains because villains, I think, are cooler than heroes. I've always found the characters a little deeper and more complex, more memorable. So the first thing I want to ask is, out of all the movie or comic book villains out there, who would you say you identify with the most? And this could be simple as appearance or as nuanced as a character trait. And if you want, I know it's kind of a strange question, I can give you my answer for which villain I think you're most like, and you can respond with a different choice or agree.
Well, yeah, let me hear what you think. That's pretty funny. I'd like to hear what, your idea of what my hero or villain is.
Okay. So there's the obvious, like, oasis in the desert, the no bones about it answer, which is, of course, the Silver Surfer. But here's the thing. I don't really consider him a villain. Oh, look, you got a little figurine right there. I don't really consider.
It's kind of weird when you put the two together. I mean, one of them's a little bit bigger than the other, but you can see.
Oh yeah, yep.
Striking similarity, right?
There is a resemblance there, but I don't know about you. I don't think he's really a villain at all. Plus, that's way too easy of a comparison. It feels like a shortcut, which isn't how I roll. Yeah. So, in my opinion, your real supervillain alter ego is Mr. Johnson from a 1957 film called Not of This Earth. And Mr. Johnson, in case you don't know, he's an alien from the planet Divana, and he has a sensitivity to high decibel and frequency levels, sounds, and he looks like a human, but he's conspicuous only for his silted, informal way of speaking and his sunglasses, which he wears even in the dark. And the reason he wears these sunglasses is because he has to hide his white blank eyes, his blank stare. He uses these eyes to kill his victims by burning through their eyes into their brains. And he removes the blood of his victims using a system of tubes and canisters that he keeps in an aluminum attaché case, which may be like a guitar case. Who knows? So we don't insinuate true evil on Guitar Villains, of course. This is all. I don't think you're actually a vampire alien, but these resemblances are quite uncanny. Like, first of all, sensitivity to high frequency sounds. I think I'd say out of any guitar player, you've played the largest gamut of low and high frequencies thanks to that trusty whammy bar. So you've done all the way down low and all the way, like, it may be as high as any guitar player or as low as they've ever gone. And I clearly know what to listen for. In the sunglasses at all times of day, I mean, that's basically your calling card, and you might be the only person in the world who can get away with doing that. And of course, the film title, Not of This Earth, it's the name of your first record. So that's what into the mindset. That might be your villain doppelganger.
I could do that. It's, if people haven't seen the film, but this is what this is basically this. The production effects were pretty good. They basically, he'd take off his glasses and you heard, which was, the sound effects guy crumpling some paper off camera. But
so that film.
Oh my God. All right. So here's the story. It's such a funny story. So,
okay. So I thought this was a deep cut, but you got it.
No, when I was in high school, I was in a couple of different bands, and a few of us were in bands together, different things. Anyway, one of my friends, Michael Arculio, was a Beatle fanatic, and he was a drummer. and he wanted to just have a Beatle band, right? And so, meanwhile, I'm the singer in the band and myself and the bass player as well. We were in our own band that did quite well, playing Zeppelin, Sabbath, Stones, that whole kind of thing. And anyway, but we're in this band with Michael because he's a cool guy and we all love the Beatles. So we're playing Beatles songs upstairs in this room every day, rehearsing like crazy. And every once in a while we go down to the kitchen. His mom makes us sandwiches or something, and there's a little TV. This is like ancient history, but anyway, back then when there was no cable and just a couple of channels going, and there'd always be the low rent channel on. I think it was Channel 9 on Long Island, and or 13, no 9. I think it was Channel 9, and they're showing B and C movies all the time. Anyway, so this one movie is on like all the time for those few months that we're rehearsing. And it happens to be the movie Not of This Earth. And the four of us memorized the entire movie because every time we took a break, we go down, the TV would be on, and, there'd be the movie. So we just adopted the script into our day-to-day language. And
that's awesome.
Okay, so fast forward years later, I relocated out to the West Coast. I'm living in Berkeley, California. I get this idea to make the leap from doing a little avant-garde EP to a full-length album. And I thought, I want to come up with a title. And I had this song that I called Not of This Earth. And I thought, if I make this the title of the album, maybe my friends will see it and they'll know where to get a hold of me, because I was putting out the record on my own label and my apartment's address was printed on the back of the sleeve, So it's the only reason why I did it was just to say hi to the three other guys, because I lost contact.
You put it out
them.
into the universe.
So I just very innocently thought, I'm nobody. I haven't got a career in instrumental music. I'm not even trying. And so I just did it as a joke, right?
Right.
So then fast forward, Steve Vai insists on sending the album to a guy named Cliff Coltrari at a small label out of New York who just signed him for his Flexible record. And Steve's idea was, if they sign me for Flexible, which is the weirdest record ever, he said, they're definitely going to sign you. So I said, well, you can go ahead and send it to him. He won't call me back. Anyway, he did. I got signed. The next album that I did for them was Surfing with the Alien. And then that's when the whole career took off. But I still had this album. It did work. Because my friends on the East Coast did see me and the title of the movie and everything. Jeez. They got the joke and they called me up. So that was the only reason why I did it. So it's so funny that you should just bring that up, because it is not a well-known film.
That is
never
really
won
weird. I mean, I
any
do
awards.
A lot of research.
It
for
has
this
sound
show.
effects like this.
Yeah.
For the burning of the brain and everything. But I still, every once in a while, I say Gandolila, and I have the script memorized,
Jeez.
I identified with the really young vacuum cleaner salesman, remember?
Right.
And he says,
right.
I can turn flip-flops in your
I found as much of
basement.
it as I could on YouTube to try and piece it, because I couldn't get it on Amazon. It seems like an interesting film. I'll find a way to view the whole thing at one point or another.
Yeah, you'll have a good laugh.
That's great. So first things first, Joe, I have a couple softball lobs for you. I call this segment Burning Questions.
Yes.
So these are rapid fire questions that if you were to conduct a live masterclass where anyone could ask you questions about anything they want regarding music, these are the questions they would ask you, which don't totally matter, but they must be answered.
Okay.
What gauge pick do you use?
Oh, extra heavies most of the time. If I'm playing melodies, solos, it seems like the extra heavy pick just makes everything sound a little bit thicker up and down the neck. And that's what I've noticed about pick thickness is the thinner the pick is, the more it reveals its mass as you traverse the strings and the fretboard. If I'm strumming, I might go to a medium. If I'm strumming an acoustic guitar that's supposed to be just part of a large group of instruments in a track, I'll use a thin pick. And that's about it. But I keep a lot of picks on hand,
Great.
different kinds, but mainly it's extra heavy.
What gauge strings do you use?
Now that's interesting. So for years I tuned to 440 and I used nines. That was kind of like my thing. Then about 10 years ago, when I got together with Chad, Michael, and Sammy to form Chickenfoot, Sammy at the time was doing E flat, and because he and Michael had been with Van Halen for so long, and they kind of adopted that tuning, and so I thought, okay, I'll drop down, and then after about 6 months, my tech and we just were getting so frustrated that we had 440 guitars with nines, and then we had these E flat guitars with tens on them, and I said, you know what, I need to make a decision here. Mm-hmm. So I just said, let's just make everything tens at E flat, and we'll just stay there. That way I can go from my gig to Chickenfoot, and I don't have to, have a whole separate set of guitars. So it did make life easier. And I started to notice that, again, traversing up and down, playing melodies and solos, I did gain something in terms of thickness, maybe, of tonality. I had to work a little harder to get strings to sort of crack open and sound thinner, which is really important when you're trying to kind of vocalize a melody.
Right.
Because if you don't, then it just sounds like you're playing scales or something. It's a particular problem for electric guitarists. But recently, since I've been home a lot, and I'm the one changing all the strings. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Usually, on tour, Mike does everything. I get new strings on all the guitars every night. Spoiled, absolutely spoiled rock star.
Especially with those Floyd Roses, it's not necessarily an easy task all the time.
It isn't, and Mike does an amazing job. Keeps me really in tune. So I started fooling around because I've been doing a lot of sessions for different people, and I started to listen to their tracks, and I'm thinking, my thing doesn't necessarily fit. So what can I do to fit? So sometimes I'd put 11s or 12s, and sometimes I'd put 9s. Sometimes I go all the way to 8. So the last 2 or 3 days I've been working on something for another musician who's doing an orchestral thing. And it's sort of like orchestra with some techno elements, but it's real orchestra. And I thought, well, this is kind of interesting because the electric guitar has got to fit in this massive thing. Not only do you have this beautiful sonic spread of a full orchestra, and we're talking, London Philharmonic, but we're also talking where he's adding elements that are software based,
Right.
And so I'm thinking, okay, so I'm somewhere in between the analog and the digital. And so I've got 2 7-string guitars, one with 10s, one with 9s, one at 440, one at E flat. I've got melody guitars with 10s at E flat and melody and solo guitars with 8s at 440. And they're all occupying the session right now, kind of next to each other. And it's been a bit confusing. For the fingers, takes me a few minutes to remind myself, like when I go to 8s, to relax a little bit.
Yeah, the bending especially, and yeah.
Yeah, but the payoff is the expressiveness, and if I didn't tell you, like if I was playing you a track and I didn't tell you it was 8s, you wouldn't guess it, and because guitar players were very sensitive to the tactile response, but actually the audience is hearing something entirely different, and so that's what I've been toying with. There's really a world of expressiveness in there, just playing around with your string gauges. It's really interesting. Cool. What you can do. A little side note, if anybody read that Pete Townsend book, there's a great little nugget of information in there about how he was taught by, I forget the guy's name, Lonnie Donegan or Dwayne Eddy or somebody, to take his G string and make it a B string, and that way when he does double stop bends, they move in pitch pretty much closer to each other than if it had been a regular G and a B. I thought that was really remarkable.
Oh,
just
cool.
For a little thing you can do. It's almost like Telecaster players going to a higher gauge for their first strings to get rid of that typical Fender Tele string buzz that's always on the first string for some reason, So Yeah, you should play around with your gauges. I guess that's the short answer.
All right, a lot of insight there on the string gauges. What is your number one guitar?
It's probably that guy over there, the chrome guitar.
Okay.
Although the MCR over there, that's the one with the 8. So that's 440 at 8s, and the chrome guitar, that's number 3. It was not supposed to be my main chrome guitar. I basically got 3 at the start of last year. One was the prototype of the JS1CR that I approved, and number 2 was the first one that came out of the factory, so to speak, and I took those on the tours with me, so they got played and banged up like crazy on the Experience Hendrix tour, which is where I got the t-shirt.
Yeah, that's a cool shirt right there.
And
so
number
three
was left at home.
That
right?
was like the perfect porridge or something. There was like, first one's too hot, too cold. This one's just right.
It surprised me. I just thought it was the one that didn't feel right, so I left it at home. And then every time I come back from the tour, I would pick it up and use it to record demos for Shapeshifting. And then I go back out on tour and I play number 1 and number 2 every night, and come back home, play number 3, and then as I started to send the demos out, everyone was telling me like, hey, whatever guitar you used on that demo, man, bring that. That thing sounds great.
Yeah.
And so it was just like one of those things, like the guitar that you ignored turned out to be your favorite guitar. It's harder to play for some reason. I don't know why. And I left the action really high, which I don't normally play with high action, but it seemed to it helped me sort of calm down the note quantity a bit. And the Shapeshifting album, I didn't want it to be a shred fest. I really wanted to concentrate on the melodies a lot more. So I thought, okay, I'll bring along a guitar that's going to make me struggle a bit, and maybe 1 out of 6 notes I'll get rid of, so it'll just sound right.
Nice. 2 more questions. What's your favorite amp? Your number 1 amp?
It's probably my JVM. They don't, Marshall doesn't make it anymore, but it's got the longest name ever, right? It's a Marshall JVM 410HJS.
Yes, highly memorable.
And I love that thing. Every time I play that, if I'm just like in one of my practice rooms and I'm just playing along with my playlist or something, I just feel so comfortable. And then every night when I walk out on stage and I turn that thing up and we pray, we're playing it pretty loud. Maybe it's 114 dB or something like that. It just feels great to me. It just always sounds right. And my gig is different than most people. I play melodies and solos all night long. That's it. It's kind of like the gig. And I play way up the neck, as you pointed out at the beginning of the show.
Yep.
I play some crazy high notes and I go all the way down. So this amp that was designed for me by engineer Santiago Alvarez really meets a lot of the issues that I had with other amps that I love, vintage Marshalls and Fenders that for my gig are always inappropriate for something. And I just can't get through a gig with using amps like that. So this one solves that issue of, let's say if I was going to be specific, like when you go to play a song like Friends, which is really high up the neck, you can't have the same piercing, screeching tone that a 4-bar solo would have, or an 8-bar solo where you're supposed to rip somebody's head off and then go back to the singer who's got a nice sounding voice.
That song in particular is also down-tuned. What is it, drop D flat or drop?
It's actually it's a drop D tuning, but we're all at E flat, so it's pretty.
Right,
it's
that's
quite
what
low.
it is.
Yeah, it sounds like C sharp.
It has like both the ability to take that high frequency, but also the girth of the low end, which is sometimes hard for some amps. They get a little flubby or whatever.
They do, yeah. And, album after album, since I guess we had the prototype for the first Chickenfoot record and we worked through it all the way through there, all the albums since then, so that's 10 years worth of albums, which is a lot of records we did. That particular setup using my 5150 and the JVM, using the same 2-speaker bottoms, just a stock 1960B and an old around 1968-69 slant 4x12 basket weave with original greenbacks in it. Those two seem to be the workhorse setup for so many situations. It's pretty remarkable. It's a great sounding amp, extremely flexible, and but the main thing is I can just turn the thing up, and it's been designed exactly for what I like. So it's a lot of fun. Last
burning question: favorite guitar pedal?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's really tough. Yesterday I brought what did I do? Yesterday I brought this one out again.
Oh, cool.
This Dry Bell Vibe Machine. It really is great.
Is that the one that you used on Corey Wong's new song?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay, really. He was just really on the show, and I was talking to him about that song, and I was like, "There's something to that tone," because I was talking about how you complimented his very clean style so well, and I thought maybe that I don't know why that just popped into my head, but it seems like maybe it had a vibe element, very subtle though.
Yes, yeah. Well, you have the ability to make it pretty subtle. Well, one of the things that's really nice about it is that I think it addresses, the modern amp setup. If you go with like an original Univibe, which was really, decades old, and we all think about Hendrix playing Machine Gun. It's just like the most iconic thing. But the recording of that is quite unique, and his setup was quite unique, and doesn't really work in today's sonic landscape. Mm-hmm. Specifically, the super high-end transients that poke through, and then just this unbridled low end, which eventually it just gets carved out by anyone mixing a modern album. And it can drive other gear crazy if you're constantly sending too much of something, into a limiter, and it's reacting, and it's actually taking away things from the part of the performance that should be getting through. So you can dial up total vintage, Univibe in this, but you can also pre-carve it so that by the time the effect gets to the amp, it's not driving all those things in the amp crazy, and any limiter or compressor you might have in processing the audio signal right before it goes to a mix. And it allows it to be more present, which I think is what you want. And certainly when you got a really funky track like Massive, you don't want to be covering it up. You want to fit in. You got to jump out, but at the same time, you want to be able to fit in because it's so gorgeous sounding. What Corey does with his buddies, it's just great. So the pedal really helps. So yeah, today I would say that's my favorite.
Today's episode of Guitar Villains is brought to you by Guitar Super System. Are you tired of YouTube ads telling you that YouTube guitar lessons suck? Me too. I don't know about you, but somebody setting an acoustic guitar on fire or teaching crappy cover songs in front of a musty black curtain feels a little disingenuous to me. I'll get straight to the point. Join tens of thousands of other guitar players and visit guitarsupersystem.com to join the most popular independent guitar learning platform on the internet. If you're a beginner, there's an entire curriculum called the Beginner's Corner just for you. If you're an expert, the music theory and technique curriculums reach the highest levels of mastery and are based on industry standard learning methods I've used since graduating Berklee College of Music. If you're somewhere in the middle, you're actually the perfect candidate. The Choose Your Destiny approach allows you to cater your learning experience to exactly what you want to accomplish, whether that's improving your improvising, ear training, learning new techniques, songwriting, and more. You'll also have access to private live streams, lesson comments, and a community forum for feedback, as well as exclusive giveaways and new curriculum releases. The best part is everything that I just mentioned is included in one monthly subscription, and you can cancel anytime, or, like a lot of people do, upgrade your subscription to a yearly pass. Of course, you can also just learn guitar right on YouTube for free, because YouTube guitar lessons don't suck if you know where to look. So check out guitarsupersystem.com. Now, back to Guitar Villains. Now we're going to move on to play a little game I call Name Those Notes. The concept is pretty simple. I'll play you a quick sequence of guitar notes from songs you've recorded over the years. And you have to tell me what song those notes come from. So we're going to see how well you know your catalog and how well you can recognize your guitar playing. And it'll spur some conversation about the music.
Okay.
So we're going to start with something easy that I think you'll get, and then things will get progressively harder. Does that sound good?
I love it.
All right, let's go.
Yeah. Now, I wrote that song upstairs on a piano, believe it or not, right? Mysterion. And I use this pedal to record. I seem to have everything like in
Ultimate
arm's reach.
octave,
Isn't that
full
weird?
tone.
We did not plan this, but yeah, the ultimate octave, the old one.
Yeah, maybe. So that's from Professor Satch and the Mysterion of Rock. Maybe your finest album title, might I say.
Oh, thank you.
I want to ask you.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Sorry. I'm not supposed to be stepping out of camera. I think I
it's
actually
all good.
used this. I think
Is that the Hendrix? Does that have the picture of Hendrix on it? Or it's.
it's
yeah,
one of
it's
those,
a
yeah.
Hendrix Dunlop. Okay, I used to have that pedal way back in the day. That's an
Yeah.
awesome. I don't know why I got rid of it.
I had the original one, which is a pain because it didn't have the battery thing. It was just drove us crazy.
Oh, cool.
So we never knew if it was dying or not. But yeah, I remember I just love the chords. They're just the weirdest chords ever, but it was just me early in the morning playing these chords on the piano thinking, I'm going to bring this in and the rest of the band is going to go, huh? Kunaberti loved it because he loves weird stuff.
Yeah.
The moment that I was coming back in the studio after getting a coffee or something like that, and Jeff was in the corner and he's just banging things and he's got his bongos. And so I go into the control room and I say, "Hey, John, you got to mic up Jeff right away. Let's just, before I even ask him, just like set it up and then we'll roll the track and I'll just surprise them, because sometimes when you have crazy ideas, if you sit down with everybody, in a meeting, right, and you say, okay, now I've got this great idea. You're going to play bongos. You're going to do the slide whistle. People have they start to object because they have ideas in their mind about how they wanted to appear on your album.
Totally.
So sometimes you got to surprise them and say, no, we're just doing this. Don't worry about it. It's just a little funny thing to have. But of course, once we heard the bongos, it did something to the weird guitar sound, which is it helped you take it in.
Yeah, I need to listen to that now. Now that you say that, I'm gonna go back and listen for that. That's a way better context for the song than I was gonna ask. So that's perfect. Okay. All right, we got another group of notes for you. You ready?
Yes.
Here we go.
Yes, I know that right away. Littleworth Lane. I wrote that on piano as well, but the first time I wrote that was in a car driving to New York City. I had spent some time with my mom out at her house in Seacliff, and I was in a limo, or a town car, something like that, leaving Long Island, and that song sort of came to me, and I remember thinking, okay, just remember every single note in your head, and just sort of catalog it.
The music feels like home. It's kind of, you said Littleworth Lane was a home of yours. Okay. So
that's the name of the street where my mother's home was.
Right. Because it's interesting the way instrumental music and titling is so hard, but that music, for the chord progression and the melodic, ideas that you craft, it really does feel like I'm going back home, and you did a really good job conveying that. And
thank you.
A personal aside, my dad loves that song, and it reminds him of his mom.
Oh, wow.
Some kindred spirits there as well. That's really, really nice.
Oh, great. It was
got a couple more for you here. Ready?
Yes. Yeah. Is there love in space? Yeah.
This feels like a transmission through the dark expanse of the universe. Is this the Hendrix part of the equation coming through? Just making noises with the guitar nobody ever thought to make?
Yeah, I guess so. I love weird sounds. I was doing it last night. It's funny. I've been working on a session that shouldn't have any weird noises on it, and I actually plugged in some stuff improperly on purpose and just recorded me banging the guitar to see what would come out. And I did come up with a soundscape that I think the client is going to be very happy or very upset about it. Surprised,
well,
without a doubt, surprised.
They're hiring Joe Satriani. They can expect a little bit of something psychedelic. But I think Hendrix certainly pioneered the concept. But I don't know if it matters what I think. But I think you've accomplished your goal you set out to do on the football field, like kind of taking what he did and carrying on the torch. Because the sounds you make actually, sometimes the sounds he made were just for pure spectacle, and sometimes they were brilliantly musical. I feel like the sounds you make actually have musical context. Like I could actually notate that little transmission, if you will, and it's really delightful.
Well, I tell you, I'm very happy to hear you say that. Everything that all the noises that the guitar can make, I really love, and I can relate to it in a really strange way. Like it's a language to me, that sometimes feels like a secret language. But I know there are people out there who get it, like yourself, who understand it. And quite innocently in this little room, I think I was recording that song, and on the wall over there was a picture of an alien that my son, who was very young at the time, had drawn. And I just remember I was writing the song to the picture and to his artwork. And I started to think, in a child's innocence, they expect love wherever they go because that's how they grow up. They're just cared for and loved, and that's one of the problems when you become older is you go out and you realize the world is not all about love, And so but I'm looking at the alien and I'm thinking, I wonder if, the concept of love is anywhere else outside the planet Earth. Is it just a human thing and that's it? And so when we get out there, it's not the radiation or the lack of oxygen or water that's going to be a problem. It's going to be the fact that the concept of love is just not recognized at all, which is be a big problem for us.
An unanswerable question that maybe we'll ponder for the rest of our days here.
Yes.
All right, I got another group of notes here. We're getting a little bit more difficult, okay? Here we go.
Wow. Where did you find that recording? Wow. I'm going to guess that's me playing with Mick Jagger at the Tokyo Dome.
That's exactly what it is.
Wow.
So maybe some people don't realize your first big break was you got the gig playing with Mick Jagger on his solo tour in the 80s. And I've heard you say what a consummate professional he was. Is there some experience on the road that sticks out? Maybe something you haven't shared about that period of time before on the tour?
On that particular tour, well, I've been interviewed like crazy about it. But it's, there were so many funny things that we shared as a group of people. One of the things that Mick was so great at was just making everybody feel like we were all in the band together.
Right.
And he just had a way of making everybody feel comfortable about it. But he worked the hardest and he put out the most, but we had just the funniest of times, that are really small little nuggets that would make us all just laugh so hard that we couldn't continue. Everyone would fall down on the ground, or something like that, just like stupid stuff. And those moments stick out with me because, there's all the moments that were written about in the press, the things that were successful, the things that were tragedies, but I got to see him deal with the chaos of life, that there's always conflict in life, but he dealt with it, and we got through the tour. We got through 2 tours, and all of that was happening while he was kind of feuding with Keith, and finally going back to the Stones, which is where I always knew he was going to be going. So it wasn't like a conflict with me, but I could see from my perspective that was something he had to really to handle. But I mean, I think there are two things that stick out in my mind, which I always remember as being so cool. One was when he liked to, like when you were doing a solo or something, he'd like to interact with you in a very theatrical way, but always very supportive, never, because he knew that, like, okay, Joe takes a solo here. He's got to stand over here. The lights are going to hit him. It's going to be loud. I want to make sure that my guitar player is just like raging at that moment. So whatever I can do to frame him. So he would do things, and you had to realize not to let it throw you off, because he's so crazy in his physical movement.
Yeah.
Right. And Doug and I, Doug Wimmish, the bass player, and I used to always agree that you couldn't watch Mick if you were grooving, because he doesn't move like a regular guy. He's out there dancing like Jerry Lewis or Jim Carrey or something. He's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you start looking at him, all of a sudden you lose your beat, because he's not grooving to you. He's acting for the audience. You know what I mean? He's doing something that's on a higher level of performance. Anyway, I do remember I was playing some solo. Maybe it was that one you played, and he just came over and he bit me on the shoulder. I thought, and I kept saying to myself, just keep going. That's Mick. That's what he does. He does weird things, but that was pretty weird. He just came over and he was like behind me and just making faces. Then he just,
chomped down.
He just decided to chomp down while I was playing, and I thought, that's great.
Yeah.
How many people can say they've been bitten by Mick Jagger while they're playing a solo in front of 90,000 people?
That's pretty epic. We'll leave it at that. I got one more group of notes for you. Here we go.
All right. Oh my God. I stole that right from Richie Blackmore. Is that
this is a stolen lick?
Well, when I hear that,
aren't they all stolen?
Yeah, I mean,
all steal from each other.
I love Richie Blackmore, and of course, I spent 6 months playing with Deep Purple, and so I had the rare opportunity as a fan to join the epic, lineup of Deep Purple.
Yeah.
And to experience doing that and to make believe just, for a microsecond, like, hey, I'm in Deep Purple. Of course, I always knew I was just an American kid from Long Island that got to play with an epic British band. And I mean, always above me was Richie Blackmore, looking down at me going, huh, really? You're going to play an Ibanez guitar? And
yeah, he maybe looked at you like, whoa, that's some clean playing right there. to put it one way, I read some of the stuff he said.
Richie's a guy you can't copy him. You can't replace him. He's just so many guitar players from that era were put so much personality into their sound, and they had such limited tools that their personality just came out. So when you go to you can cop the notes and figure out the fingering, but you can never actually figure out the essence and the magic that goes into it. It's like it's like Jimmy Page. You can't contain that. There'll never be a book that can explain the genius of Jimmy Page. It's just, you can't do it. He's just too creative every microsecond that he plays the guitar.
Yeah, it's true.
And so any attempt to sort of rein it in and codify it is like, forget about it,
So that solo, you I don't know if you guessed the song. Did you guess the song?
Oh, I'm thinking what confused me is I used it on a couple of things, but that's from the new record, right? It's from Hear the Blue River. No, it's from what's the other one? I forget the title now.
It's Falling.
Falling stars.
Yes,
Yeah.
falling stars.
Yeah.
I gave you an interesting. I always give the hardest, like, out of context passage for the last one because it could fall in like 17 different spots, especially with how many songs you have. But this is a good segue. This is my favorite song on the new record. You had this awesome YouTube series where you broke down each song, and I really enjoyed watching that. Do you know the book The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yes, yeah, many years ago.
I feel like you could write the musician's guide to the studio with all you've probably learned over the years. You've already kind of demonstrated some of that knowledge, like the way you were talking about how guitar pedals would affect the mix that you deliver to the engineer and things like that. So how much of those laws did you rely on during the recording of Shapeshifting?
Oh, wow. What I mean, we could talk about that for hours. I mean, the main thing is I guess since 98, I've done a lot of home recording that has contributed either, 99% or 50% of the end result guitars, that wind up on the album, like a lot of people these days, so this particular record, Shapeshifting, again contained. I'll just throw in, maybe it's 50% that the performances were done at home and they somehow survived the transition to a new studio, a new co-producer, a new band. I'm always flexible about that. Like a song like Yesterday's Yesterday. I always thought we'd be using more elements from that, but as soon as I got in the room with the guys, I thought, oh no, I have to change my part. I got to react to this great thing that's happening here. With Falling Stars, it's very complicated in a very subtle way. There's lots of layers of guitars that are doing little things, and I should mention that when I brought the project to the band and to Jim Scott, who I had never worked with before, I said, "Look, I got this idea. Instead of me saying we're going to do a reggae album, or we're going to do a dance record, an EDM record, or a metalcore record, and every song's got to be put into that thing to make, pump. In that particular direction, I said, let's do the opposite thing. I'm going to bring 15 songs. Every song is totally different, and I want us to break down and to reset ourselves and our gear for every song, almost like we're a different band for each song. And so we'll shapeshift, hence the title, for each one of these pieces. So everyone got excited about that because it wasn't the usual thing that they would be asked to do for an album. And so every morning, the guys would show up and be like, wow, let's just break everything down and screw it back together in some new way with what, Jim and I decided to do. So working with Jim Scott was amazing. He just got fantastic ears. He's got this unbelievable creative attitude and knows how to handle people. Just like all the producers that I've worked with have been really great, people persons, whatever you want to call
people.
people. They know, they know how to handle the very volatile emotional situation of musicians letting their guard down and giving everything they have and not being afraid to make mistakes and all that kind of stuff. It's very necessary if you're going to get a great album. And he, plus that studio Pliers in Valencia, California is so crazy. It's just such awesome. A personal, crazy warehouse that Jim put together. And, you go there and it's like the fun house of all time. You just want to have a great time. He gets great sounds. And, so we should know, just practically, stating, we had those two bottoms I talked about earlier. We had my 1960B. We had my very old basket weave cabinet. We had an alternative to both, like with some vintage 30s and another basket weave that for some reason doesn't sound as good as the other one. I don't know why. And then we had a bunch of brand new Fender combos, which I really like, the hand-wired ones and the custom ones. So the silver face and the black face. We had Princeton's, Deluxes. I had some new Fender Custom Shop Bandmaster stuff. I think I had my black face dual Showman. And on that particular song, Jim had this idea like, well, why don't we start with the smallest amp and then, wind up with the biggest one that can handle the pedal, this guy here, which is the last solo was done with the sub and up.
TC Electronic, great pedal.
I used that for the song Big Distortion as well. Great sounding pedal, lots of fun, very complex, always spits out a different sound every time you play, which I think is a really cool thing for a pedal to do, not to repeat itself, so so we had all them lined up in a row in the studio, and then we would reamp. We use this here.
It's all around you, all the tools.
Yes, John Cuniberti's original reamp cool. That he invented way back in the early 90s when we were doing the Time Machine album. That wound up being the one, and I think I got this on eBay actually, because I kept giving all the ones that I had, I gave away to all my friends, and then I realized, hey, I don't have one. So anyway, that's a great device. It just, I don't know, it loves guitars and basses, and it loves the amp that it sends it to. So we did a lot of reamping of solos that I had done at home. And then we added guitars as well, fresh new guitars. And it's really interesting. I mean, that's one of those songs that's got a lot of equipment on it. Mm-hmm. It's just, I made a list of everything that I sent to journalists when the album was first coming out, because it came out April 10th. So I was doing a lot of press at the beginning of the year. And I realized I can't remember the whole list of things I did. So I made a text file, and I just, starting the interview, I said, look, I'm just going to send you this text file, just whatever you want to do with it. But because I may screw it up. I may forget, what pedal I used on what solo, because there's like 6 of them on there. So.
Well, that's an awesome album, and also like it came out obviously at the weirdest time in human history, and I'm never going to forget that, and I'm always going to associate it with just the time, like a couple things, during this time that came out, like for John Petrucci's album too, like they're going to be tied to a certain point in a positive light as just being like this awesome, cool little distraction, if you will, if nothing else, because sometimes that's what music has to be.
It is, we're musicians. John's record is amazing. I love the fact that he did it and he released it. Our job is to make music for people. So why would we stop? If we can do it, that's what we should keep doing. And we'll get over the current crisis, and the music will last forever. So there's no reason for anybody to hold back. Yeah. The music business is always weird, by the way. It's never right. There's always chaos, and seems like every 2 years now, you have to reevaluate what exactly the music business is. But as I've been in the music business since I was 14, and it has always been weird and chaotic and crazy. There's never the right time for anything. So you just make music, give it to people, and then make more music.
That's a good philosophy. I'm going to live by that. I have couple little wind down questions you can answer in one sentence or as long as you'd like. Your favorite airplane album, favorite thing to listen to flying on an airplane?
Oh, something that really makes me think. I mean, I've spent a lot of time, 30,000 feet in the air, as you can imagine, touring the world so many times. I like the weird records. Can a really quick story?
No.
First time I heard Videotape by Radiohead was on an airplane, and I didn't realize that the cassette or whatever it is that they play music on was warped. So I just remember it came on, and I'm listening to it, and I'm thinking, this is genius. They literally went and they put a warped sounding song on their record. And of course, the subject matter and everything about the song is weird anyway.
Yeah.
And I just remember having like a cathartic moment all the way up there in the air, flying in a little metal tube, listening to this warped piece of music. I was a little disappointed when I got home and I got the album and I listened to it and I thought, oh, that doesn't sound weird at all. But
it was a momentary. That is very interesting.
It goes to show you that when a piece of music hits you, that it's got nothing to do with technicalities. You know what I mean? And so like when guitar players are freaking out over their mixes and they're, there'll be 1 dB more of 6K or whatever, ultimately it doesn't matter. You're just really stroking yourself, that people are going to like it or they're not going to like it. But not for reasons that you can ever control.
That's true. That's very true. And I think maybe your secret weapon to writing a good song might simply just be titling the song whatever the album name is, because I have this list here. I'm going to go real quick. Surfing with the Alien, Flying in a Blue Dream, Not of This Earth, The Extremist, Crystal Planet, Super Colossal, Shapeshifting, Shockwave Supernova, What Happens Next, and your best title track, in my opinion, Unstoppable Momentum. So there's something about the title tracks that maybe if you're, in a rut, you're like, all right, well, I'm going to write the title track and this is going to be an amazing song. So there you go. You can keep that in your back pocket. I just
write them. I remember you said that Unstoppable Momentum. I was sitting right over there in that corner when this room looked quite different. But I'm glad you love that song. I got to tell you, there was a moment in the studio when we recorded Unstoppable Momentum where we had done a lot of really good takes, and I thought, I just got a weird idea, guys. And I said, what about, Vinny, like when we get towards the end, you just like freak out and we'll just keep playing the riff. But you just completely go nuts.
I love that.
And he
part,
looked at me like, are you ready?
Would you like to unleash the fire?
And so all of a sudden we go to do this one take, and it's everyone's playing it cool. They want to, get to the song, right? We get to that moment in this song, and he just goes so crazy,
berserk.
And I'm looking, and we're at Skywalker, so it's a huge room, but I can see all the way like 40 feet across the music room. The people in the control room are losing their minds. I look over, everyone is like screaming, like trying to follow the click in their headphones because Vinny has finally unleashed the fury. And then he comes right back, right at the end, and he just nails the ending. It was like, oh my God, that's going on the record.
Yeah. Some things you just need one pass and it's just like,
that was it. That was it. I'm sure it was one of those things like, well, if you put it on the record, it's not a single, that's for sure. But I said, well, no, that's going on the record because that was a moment that all of us shared. It was a beautiful moment in the history of the universe, and I want it to be preserved forever.
Well, I'm glad that moment happened. I've enjoyed it many, many times. So one final little game here very quickly.
Yeah.
Build a band. What 4 others in a band, living or dead, would you want to play with? So you're on guitar, 4 other people, anyone you want, any instrument, go.
Oh, well, I think Elvin Jones on the drums and Jaco Pastorius on the bass. I think I think Ray Thistlethwaite, my new keyboard player. I put Ray on the keyboards. Do I get one more guy?
Yep, one more.
Well, I wonder if you'd bring in to sing. Maybe I get Robert Plant to sing. I love how Robert knows how to step out of the way. When you listen to those, what was it called? How the West Was Won, all the live stuff, the Zeppelin stuff. First of all, Jimmy Page is godlike. I mean, he's just like an improvising
Guru.
Freakazoid, and he just like, no matter how everybody, all the fans hang on to every note that he played on the albums, he just will not play it the way it's on the album. He just like every performance, he does something so risky, so out there. And Robert Plant just hangs in there with the band. It's absolutely amazing. He's like Billie Holiday and Miles Davis rolled into a white rock and roll singer from England.
Hard to do that as a singer, to like have that talent of like existing on the stage when you're not singing. It's an underrated talent. Yeah,
but he's part of the energy, which is really interesting. If anyone hasn't listened to his podcast, he's got some great podcasts where you can really tap into the heart and soul and the mind of Robert Plant. Yeah,
Robert Plant has a podcast?
Yes, he does.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Digging Deep, I think it's called.
I'm going to have to check that out. That's cool.
Yeah.
So finally, Joe, to loop in your guitar supervillain alter ego, I have one final question for you.
Okay.
What do you believe about guitar that most guitar players would think is crazy? And this could be a hard truth guitar players need to hear, or something you know that others don't, maybe a misconception about the instrument, or whatever you want. What do you believe about the guitar or guitar playing that others may not?
Well, one thing's for certain: if you're a guitar player and your finger is touching the strings and people can hear it, they will hear your story. So you better have something to say. This is just a truth, you know. And the reason why I mention this is because, you know, as guitar players, we admire people who take technique into the stratosphere. You know, we can't help it, you know, because we identify with how difficult it is to play the guitar. It's always going out of tune. It's convoluted. It's, you know, it's hard to fit into, especially to modern music. And the younger players today are doing just things on the guitar that are astounding, absolutely astounding, really amazing. However, the truth about guitar playing that every younger generation, even the ones that haven't started yet, are going to have to understand is that if they want to be known for their uniqueness, they actually have to learn how to play less, because the more you play, the less time the audience has to hear that connection between your fingertip and the string, because it's too fast. They can't hear it. The more fingers you use, you know, like, you know, when I'm using my little pick on the strings to flutter, that's not Joe anymore. That's just a pick. Anybody can imitate me doing that. And so, you know, this was, I think, one of the brilliant things about Eddie Van Halen was that when he started with his tapping thing, he took it only so far. Mm-hmm. You could still hear it was Eddie when he did it. And there are millions of others who can do it better than he, but you can't tell who they are. So what does that tell you? It tells you that as the technique and the note quantity gets higher and higher, the average audience cannot hear the difference unless you've somehow created a compositional context that is so original from everybody else. Kind of like Beethoven, you know. When Beethoven came on, he played so many ideas in one piece of music, everyone thought he was crazy and they hated him for it. But they couldn't ignore the fact that, taken as a whole, he'd done something with the compositional quality and the message, and he couldn't be ignored. And that's why we know his name today from the compositional content, not because he played a lot of notes. A lot of people can play a lot of notes. And so when you're sitting there and you can play as fast as the fastest guitar player, and you're sitting there and you go, now, how come everybody knows B.B. King's name? You just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Every note that B.B. played, he made sure you could hear it was him, his fingertip, telling you his story, showing you his feeling. And the faster you go, the harder it is to send that message out. So you got to make that connection between the message you're trying to send out, the story you're trying to tell, and how you're doing it. You may be working against yourself. Sometimes you need to be the fastest guy ever. And so I'm all for technique. I love all the players that play faster than I will ever play and more complicated. I literally love it. And I watch them every day because it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
But I've often said to my students, all techniques are the same. All chords are the same. All notes are the same. There is no scale better than any other scale. It's all equal. They're just tools in a toolbox that us as musicians have to understand. We use them to elicit emotions, to make music, to accompany people's lives. That's what we do. So don't get freaky about the technique. It's just tools. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I appreciate those words. Those are wise pieces of advice. I definitely appreciate it. So Joe, as
sorry for the long answer.
Oh no, man, I would sit here and talk to you all day. I know you have other things to do. So as we wind down here, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to be on Guitar Villains today. It's been a great honor to talk to you. You've been a huge inspiration in my guitar life for a long time. So this has been a huge privilege for me. And,
great. It was a lot of fun.
I'll look forward to seeing which treacherous plots you devise next in your musical endeavors.
Yes, treacherous plots. Yeah. Well, I identify with this guy here because he was, metaphysically challenged. The poor guy. He was in love, and then he gets turned into this, and he's been both villain and good guy. Mostly good guy in this comic strip, but turned into a bad guy in the Marvel films. But one of these days we'll have to get him some clothes,
At least some sunglasses.